You think this
As
is a
they
game, little
awaited their
girl?
death, they saw a
She won't last a
phantom
week out here.
achieving the impossible.
We'll see who breaks first.
This is the most astonishing rescue story in military history. In a dusty Afghan valley, surrounded by jagged mountains, as the first rays of sun fell upon Kestrel Forward Operating Base, a new face stood out: Lieutenant Rachel Hayes. Young, perhaps in her late 20s, with striking blonde hair and ocean blue eyes, she possessed delicate and graceful appearance. This very look often made her a constant target for those who deemed her unworthy of the Special Forces, one of the nation's most elite military units. Rachel had successfully completed the grueling Special Forces training, overcoming every physical and mental obstacle. She was excellent in marksmanship, masterful in close-quarters combat techniques, and had proven her genius in military strategy. However, the delicate silhouette beneath her uniform and the calm energy she exuded created a wall of prejudice in the world of tough guys. When she first joined her unit, they openly underestimated her. Whispers like, "What's someone so fragile doing in Special Forces?" and "She won't even last one operation," echoed in every corner of the base. They excluded her from operations, keeping her away from risky missions. Despite all this injustice, Rachel maintained her silence, her eyes gleaming with an unspoken determination. Every rejection only strengthened her, pushing her to quietly hone her skills. On a classified mission, a Special Forces team found themselves trapped in the heart of hell. The firefight intensified, hopes dwindled. As desperate voices crackled over the radio, echoing through the base, Rachel, without a word to anyone, slipped into the operation zone like a shadow. How did she neutralize the enemies, one by one, without firing a single shot? And what did those hardened soldiers, trapped in the ambush, feel when they saw the woman they always mocked as fragile, standing before them, their savior? That day began with a routine mission. A 6-person elite Special Forces team, commanded by Captain Ben Carter, was on a highly classified intelligence-gathering mission deep behind enemy lines. The mission was critical, demanding extreme precision. The team consisted of experienced soldiers, highly adaptable to the toughest conditions. However, they fell into an unexpected ambush along their planned route. Trapped within a narrow canyon, they were suddenly caught under intense crossfire. Captain Carter's initial radio calls were filled with panic. "Ambush! Under heavy fire! We have wounded! I repeat, we have seriously wounded!" The command center rapidly tried to assess the situation. Radar screens marked the team's trapped position with a red alert. The firefight intensified. Their ammunition dwindled rapidly, leaving them with no escape. The radio connection broke, replaced by mere static. A tense silence permeated Kestrel Base's operations center. Everyone knew that Captain Carter's team's chances of survival diminished with every passing minute. Emergency support teams were prepared, but reaching the team's location would take hours, even days, due to the treacherous terrain and heavy enemy presence. Hope was fading. Rachel, meanwhile, was in the background of the operations center, performing her routine logistical duties. She had overheard the desperate calls from the radio. On the screens displaying maps, she saw the details of the canyon where the team was trapped. She knew this canyon intimately. It was one of the regions where she had secretly conducted solo reconnaissance climbs months earlier, unbeknownst to her unit. She had etched every enemy weak point, every infiltration route, every crevice of the canyon into her mind. For her, this was not just a duty, it was a test of years of honed skills. Without notifying anyone, without seeking anyone's approval, Rachel quietly slipped out of the operations center. She wore only her standard duty uniform, but her backpack contained meticulously prepared, lightweight tactical equipment and her own detailed, hand-drawn maps. She vanished into the dimly lit corridors of the base like a shadow. Even the sentries barely registered her presence. For her, this was not merely a mission, it was a call to justice and human life. It was time to silently answer all those who had underestimated her. As Rachel merged into the darkness of the night, heading towards the mountains, only one thought occupied her mind: rescuing the team. The moonlight illuminated the sharp silhouettes of the mountains. Every whisper of the wind seemed to tell her the enemy's positions. Every echo of the rocks guided her along the correct path. This was her personal Siren's Call operation, a race against both time and the enemy. The Siren's song and the unseen fight. Rachel moved like a shadow across the dusty Afghan terrain. The moonlight cast sharp contrasts on the canyon walls, and every step she took was silent. The tracking, concealment, and stealth techniques she had learned in Special Forces training were perfectly suited for this moment. She listened to the whispers of the wind, read every curve of the rocks, and distinguished the faintest footsteps of enemy patrols with incredible precision. This was the fruit of her natural talent, honed by long hours of solitary training. As she approached the ambush site, the sounds of the firefight became clearer. The rapid bursts of automatic weapons, the concussions of explosions, the agonizing cries. Captain Carter's team was pinned behind a narrow rock outcrop, their ammunition rapidly dwindling. The scent of death hung heavy in the air. From behind a massive boulder, Rachel observed the team's desperate situation. The enemy was firing from the hills and the canyon entrance, relentlessly suppressing the team. They were numerically superior and held a significant strategic advantage. Rachel's heart pounded, but her mind remained ice-cold. She closed her eyes for a moment, silencing the external noise, and visualized the canyon's acoustics, the wind's direction, and the rhythm of enemy patrols. Every technique taught to her in Special Forces training now fueled this single purpose: saving lives. This was not merely a physical assault, it was a psychological game. She silently glided towards her first target. An enemy sniper was providing suppressive fire over the team. Rachel climbed through the rock outcrops, seemingly defying gravity, moving with an impossible lightness. She positioned herself behind the sniper. Not a single bullet was fired. With a swift yet controlled movement, she disarmed the sniper and silently rendered him unconscious. The sniper lost consciousness without even realizing what had happened. This was her method, leaving no trace, making no sound. Next, it was the enemy's communication center. At another end of the canyon, a commander was constantly issuing orders over the radio. Rachel used one of the canyon's hidden passages, which she had discovered months prior, to infiltrate behind enemy lines. Utilizing the natural cover of darkness and wind, she approached the commander undetected. Swiftly, she neutralized the startled commander, silencing his radio. This created an instant disruption in the enemy's chain of command. Orders ceased, and their coordination crumbled. Time was running out. The team's ammunition was almost depleted. Rachel moved around the enemy's main assault point. Using the darkness and terrain perfectly, she blended among the enemy soldiers. She slipped through their formations, silently disarming their weapons, sabotaging their communication devices. The enemies couldn't comprehend why their comrades suddenly went silent, why their radios ceased to function, why their weapons malfunctioned. They believed an unseen hand was hunting them. Panic quickly spread through their ranks. After creating complete chaos within the enemy ranks, Rachel moved towards the pinned team's location. In a final decisive move, she silently neutralized the last few enemy soldiers surrounding the team. The sounds of conflict in the area abruptly ceased. The team members looked at each other in astonishment. They couldn't understand what had happened. The enemy had retreated, but they hadn't heard any gunfire. Their ammunition depleted, their hopes gone, these soldiers, expecting death, suddenly found themselves in profound silence. Lieutenant Rachel Hayes, her face was streaked with dust and sweat, but her eyes held the calm glimmer of triumph. She didn't have a single scratch on her. The team froze when they saw her. They couldn't believe it. Standing before them was the woman they had always mocked as fragile, the one they deemed unworthy of operations, and she had saved them. The team's admiration and astonishment were more profound than the silence that echoed in the depths of the canyon. Captain Carter looked at his exhausted but alive soldiers, then his gaze shifted to Rachel. "Lieutenant Hayes," he murmured, his voice filled with disbelief. "How did you do that?" Rachel, with a calm demeanor, replied, "I knew the enemy's positions and their weaknesses, sir, and they fear an unseen enemy more." These simple yet profound words opened a new understanding in the team's minds. The wounded soldiers were stabilized, and the team set off towards the base. Rachel led the team throughout the journey, identifying the safest routes and remaining constantly vigilant against potential threats. Her terrain knowledge and intuitive abilities were of a mastery they had never witnessed. The soldiers who had once underestimated her now looked at her with immense respect, admiring her every move. Whispers began to circulate, but this time they were not mocking, but filled with admiration. "Siren," one whispered, referring to her calm, almost magical abilities even in danger. This name now stuck to her, like an unofficial call sign. Their return to Kestrel Base felt less like a triumph and more like the unveiling of a profound secret. Captain Carter, upon entering the operations center, recounted everything in meticulous detail. "Commander," he stated, his voice filled with newfound conviction, "the enemy retreated, but we didn't hear a single shot fired. Lieutenant Hayes, she neutralized them, single-handedly, without weapons." Colonel Miller, base commander, turned to Rachel in astonishment. "How is this possible, Lieutenant?" he asked. Rachel, calmly, explained the tactics she employed, how she manipulated enemy psychology, how she utilized the canyon's acoustics, and how she infiltrated silently. Throughout her explanation, astonishment was etched on the faces of everyone in the operations center. This was not merely a military operation. It was a game of intellect, an art form. Rachel's every detail was flawless. Those who had consistently labeled her as fragile now understood how sharp her mind was, how ironclad her will. Colonel Miller looked at the map on the table, then back at Rachel. "Lieutenant Hayes," he declared, his voice filled with pride. "Today, you didn't just save a team, you redefined what Special Forces truly means." Following this incident, Rachel's standing within her unit transformed completely. They no longer excluded her from operations. On the contrary, they now desperately needed her unique abilities and intellect. For the next critical and highly classified mission, the team members unanimously voted for Rachel as their team leader. Siren was no longer just a call sign. It was a symbol of the team's trust and respect. The hardened Special Forces soldiers who had once underestimated her now eagerly awaited her commands. Rachel's story transcended the walls of Kestrel Base, spreading throughout all Special Forces units. Her strength, tenacity, and intellect, extending far beyond her physical appearance, brought a new perspective to the unit. Now, training emphasized not only brute physical strength, but also environmental awareness, understanding enemy psychology, and silent tactics. Rachel had not only saved a team, but had also initiated a quiet revolution within the Special Forces culture. Lieutenant Rachel Siren Hayes never made headlines, nor was she publicly decorated in grand ceremonies, but she etched her name in history in golden letters. Her story demonstrated that true courage and leadership are not always loud or visible. Sometimes, the greatest victories come from the most unexpected individuals and through the quietest methods. She continues to serve in the field, an inspiring leader to the next generation of Special Forces soldiers, breaking down prejudices and pushing the boundaries of human potential. Rachel's story is a living testament to how silent power and undeniable talent can overcome all odds and prejudices. Siren's epic flight through the Siren's Call is more than just an achievement. It's a symbol of overlooked potential and quiet heroism. This story proves that the greatest victories sometimes come from the most unexpected places. If you love inspiring and thought-provoking stories like this, join our community by subscribing to our channel. What are your thoughts on Amelia's determination and intuition? Don't forget to share your comments below. Your feedback enriches the Truth in the Mirror channel.